I never imagined the proudest day of my life would end with me sobbing on a bare floor, surrounded by unpacked boxes and the echoes of my own family's cruelty. The key, just moments before, had felt like a medal in my hand, heavy with achievement, the culmination of years of scrimping, saving, and endless overtime. My name is Lata, and this little two-bedroom house, with its slightly overgrown garden and the faint smell of fresh paint, was supposed to be it, the moment everything changed for the better. My fresh start, my sanctuary. I'd practically bounced on my heels waiting for them to arrive, my heart thumping a rhythm of pure, unadulterated joy. When their car pulled up, I rushed to the door, beaming. "Welcome," I announced, swinging the door wide. "Come in, come in." My mother, Valeria, stepped in first, her eyes scanning the empty living room, a space I'd already mentally filled with a comfortable sofa and overflowing bookshelves. My sister Lana followed, a smirk playing on her lips. My father, Paul, brought up the rear, his gaze already drifting towards the floor. "Well, this is it," I said, my voice trembling slightly with excitement. "It needs furniture, obviously, and a lot of work, but it's mine, all mine." I gestured around, pointing out the large window overlooking the garden. "I thought I'd put a little breakfast nook there, and the kitchen needs a complete overhaul, but the bones are good, you know?" Valeria finally spoke, her voice flat. "It's small." Lana snorted. "Small and empty, like your social life." I ignored Lana, my smile faltering only a little. "It's perfect for me, Mom, and it's a start. The mortgage isn't too bad, and I got a decent interest rate." I led them through to what would be the main bedroom. "This room gets the morning sun. Imagine waking up to that." That's when Valeria turned on me. Her face, which had been merely unimpressed, twisted into a mask of fury. "Selfish!" she suddenly shrieked, her voice bouncing off the bare plaster walls, each syllable a hammer blow. "How could you be so utterly selfish, Zlata?" I recoiled as if struck. "What? What are you talking about?" "This money!" Valeria's voice rose, her finger jabbing towards me, then around the room. "This house, this should have been for your brother, for Riker." My stomach plummeted. Riker, of course, my perpetually struggling, always in need of a bailout younger brother. "Mom, this is my money. I saved for this. Riker hasn't worked a steady job in his life." "He has potential," Valeria spat. "He has plans, important plans. He needs a start, a real investment. Not this." She waved a dismissive hand at my dream. "Wasting it all on yourself when your brother is trying to build something." Lana chimed in, her voice dripping with malice. "She's right, you know. You don't deserve this house, Zlata. Always thinking of yourself. Riker could have used that down payment to finally get his business off the ground. The one he was telling us about? The import-export thing? The import-export thing that changed every other week and never materialized beyond vague pronouncements. He wouldn't have used it for a business, Lana, and you know it. He would have blown it, just like every other bit of money he's ever gotten his hands on." My voice was shaking now, the joy draining out of me, replaced by a familiar, sickening dread. "Don't you dare speak about your brother like that!" Valeria advanced on me, her eyes blazing. "He needs support, family support, something you clearly know nothing about." I looked past her desperately to my father. "Dad?" I pleaded. "Dad, say something." Paul just stood there, his shoulders slumped, his eyes fixed on a scuff mark on the floorboards. He wouldn't meet my gaze. He just shuffled his feet, a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of his head, his only contribution. His silence was a roar, louder than Valeria's screams, more cutting than Lana's sneers. It was an affirmation of their every cruel word. "You see?" Valeria said, a triumphant, ugly twist to her lips. "Even your father knows. This is a disgrace, Zlata, a selfish, thoughtless act." Tears were welling in my eyes, hot and stinging. "I worked for this," I whispered, my throat tight. "Every penny. I sacrificed so much." Sacrifice? Lana laughed, a harsh, grating sound. What do you know about sacrifice? Mom and Dad have sacrificed everything for Riker, and you just waltz in and buy a house for yourself? You should give him the money, Valeria declared, her voice suddenly steely. Sell this place, or take out a loan against it. Give Riker what he's owed. It's the least you can do after this betrayal. Betrayal? My head was spinning. They were the ones betraying me, tearing down my proudest moment, stomping on my heart with their entitlement and their blind devotion to Riker. I couldn't speak. The words wouldn't come. I just stared at them, at these people who were supposed to be my family, my supporters. We're leaving, Valeria announced, her nose in the air. I can't stand to be in this monument to your selfishness a moment longer. Come on, Paul. Lana. They turned and walked out, Valeria and Lana still muttering about my ingratitude, about Riker's needs. Paul didn't even look back. The front door slammed shut, the sound echoing through the empty rooms like a gunshot. I stood there frozen for a long moment. Then my knees buckled, and I sank to the floor, the rough wood cold beneath my hands. The sobs came then, racking my body, raw and agonizing. My dream house, my sanctuary, had become a torture chamber in the space of 10 minutes. The unpacked boxes around me seemed to mock my ambition, my hope. Hours might have passed. The light began to fade outside, casting long, gloomy shadows across the bare floors. The tears eventually slowed, leaving me hollowed out, cold, and achingly empty. I pushed myself up, my limbs stiff. Wiping my wet face with the back of my hand, I looked around the dim, silent room. The smell of fresh paint now seemed cloying, suffocating. But as I stared into the gathering darkness, something else began to stir within the emptiness. A tiny, hard kernel of something cold and sharp. The hurt was still there, a gaping wound, but beneath it, a different emotion was taking root. Resolve, an icy, unyielding resolve. They would all pay. One day they would understand what it felt like to have everything taken away, to be humiliated and abandoned by the people who should have loved them most. They would understand. I would make sure of it. The first thing I did after they left, after the sobs finally subsided into a dull, throbbing ache, was to pick up a paintbrush. I'd bought a can of sunny yellow paint for the kitchen. It was supposed to be a cheerful project for the weekend. Now, it felt like an act of defiance. I pried open the lid, dipped the brush, and started on the wall opposite where Valeria had stood, spewing her venom. Each stroke was a reclamation. My house, my color, my life. The next few weeks were a blur of paint fumes, flat-pack furniture assembly, and sheer, stubborn effort. I worked at my marketing job during the day, then came home and worked on the house until I collapsed into a sleeping bag on the floor, too exhausted to even feel the loneliness. I learned to tile a backsplash from YouTube tutorials, my knuckles raw, my back screaming, but the small, gleaming white squares were a victory. I planted a rose bush under the living room window, a vibrant crimson that felt like a middle finger to their drab pronouncements. Contact from them was minimal, and always, predictably, about Riker. A curt text from Lana a month later. Riker needs a bit of cash for a deposit on a sure thing. Mom said to ask you. I deleted it without replying. A voicemail from Valeria a few weeks after that, her voice saccharine sweet. Zlata, darling, Riker was just wondering if you had any old furniture you weren't using for your new place. He's trying to set up his office, you know, for his new venture. Click, delete. Paul, of course, remained silent. It was during this period I met Marlene. She worked in the design department, a few floors above me. We bumped into each other in the break room, both lamenting the terrible coffee. It tastes like despair, she'd said, wrinkling her nose, and I'd laughed, a genuine laugh, for the first time in what felt like ages. With a hint of burnt ambition, I'd replied. We started having lunch together. Marlene was easy to talk to, sharp and funny, with a no-nonsense attitude I appreciated. One rainy afternoon, over soggy sandwiches, the story of my housewarming disaster just spilled out. She listened patiently, her expression growing more incredulous with every detail. "Wow," she said when I finally finished, her voice soft. "Just wow. Your own mother? And sister, and my father by saying nothing. That's brutal, Zlata. Absolutely brutal." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You know, for what it's worth, you did the right thing. It's your money, your life." Her simple validation was like a balm. "Thanks, Marlene. Sometimes I replay it in my head." "Don't," she said firmly. "Use that energy to make your place amazing, and your career. Show them." I took her advice to heart. I poured every ounce of my being into my job. I volunteered for challenging projects, stayed late, pitched new ideas. 6 months later, I landed a significant promotion with a hefty raise. The first thing I bought was a ridiculously comfortable armchair for my living room, a place to sit and read, a symbol of my hard-won independence. Marlene sometimes passed on snippets of news she'd hear through the grapevine, a distant cousin who knew her sister-in-law, that sort of thing. "Heard Riker's latest brilliant idea involved investing your parents' emergency fund in some crypto scheme that tanked overnight," she told me one evening as we shared a bottle of wine on my newly built small patio. A cold satisfaction trickled through me, but I just shrugged. "Not my circus, not my monkeys." "Good," Marlene said, nodding. "Keep it that way." One Saturday, I was finally tackling the last of the boxes I'd moved from my old tiny apartment. Most of it was junk, but there was one box labeled Mom's Old Stuff, Return, that I'd apparently grabbed by mistake in my hasty departure from the family home years ago when I first moved out on my own. I'd meant to give it back, but then life happened. I figured I'd sort through it and toss most of it. Old magazines, some chipped knickknacks, a few of Valeria's romance novels. Tucked inside one of the books, however, was an envelope. It was unsealed, addressed to me in my father's spidery handwriting. My heart gave a strange little flutter. I pulled out the single sheet of paper. It was dated shortly after I'd first announced I was saving for a house, years before the ambush. "Zlata," it read. "Your mother is difficult about this. She doesn't understand your drive. I'm proud of you. It's not much, but I managed to put aside a little from my pension for your house. Don't tell Valeria. She'd just want it for Riker. Keep going. Dad." Tucked inside the folded paper were 5 crisp $100 bills. Money I'd never received. Money Valeria had clearly found and confiscated. I sank onto the edge of my bed, the letter trembling in my hand. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over me. A flicker of something warm towards Paul, quickly extinguished by the cold reality of his ultimate cowardice. He'd written the words, yes, he'd even tried to give me money, but he hadn't stood up for me when it mattered. He hadn't stopped Valeria. He hadn't protected me from her, or from Lana. "So," I murmured, staring at the bills, the ink on the page. He wasn't just silent, he was silenced, or simply too weak. I folded the letter carefully, placing it and the money into my own jewelry box. It changed nothing about what they had done, as a unit. It changed nothing about what I knew I still had to do. It changes nothing. 5 years. 5 years I poured into that house, into my career, into myself. The sunny yellow kitchen was now the heart of my home, filled with the aroma of baking or the clatter of pans as I experimented with new recipes. The crimson rosebush had thrived, climbing halfway up the wall, a splash of defiant color against the calm gray I'd eventually painted the exterior. My little 2-bedroom house had become a sanctuary, every corner reflecting my taste, my hard work, my peace, my fortress. Professionally, things had only gotten better. The promotion Marlene had cheered me on for was just the first step. I'd climbed the ladder steadily, my reputation for sharp strategies and relentless execution preceding me. I now managed a whole team, had a corner office with a view that stretched across the city, and a salary that allowed me not just comfort, but choices. The choice to travel, the choice to invest, the choice to live life entirely on my own terms. News of my family, when it came, was like dispatches from a distant, crumbling empire. Aunt Sophia, my mother's estranged sister, would occasionally call, her voice a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. "Valeria and Paul had to sell the big house, you know," she'd informed me one Tuesday evening, her voice crackling over the line. "Riker, apparently. Another one of his brilliant ventures went belly up. Some sort of artisanal pickle company, I think. Lost a fortune. They're in a little townhouse now, over by the old mill." "Is that so?" I'd replied, my voice carefully neutral as I swirled the wine in my glass, looking out at my own meticulously tended garden. "Yes, shame really. That was a lovely house. Your grandmother left it to Valeria, you know." A cold little smile touched my lips. "Indeed, a shame." The old vow, the one I'd made on that bare floor amidst the unpacked boxes, hadn't faded. It simmered, a low, steady heat beneath the surface of my successful life. It wasn't a raging fire anymore, but a patient, waiting ember. Each piece of news about their decline was like a small, dry twig added to it. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but a strange premonition made me answer. "Zlata, is that you?" The voice was instantly recognizable, though laced with a forced brightness that set my teeth on edge. "Lana." "Yes, Lana. What do you want?" I kept my tone cool, professional. "Oh, Zlata, it's so good to hear your voice. It's been ages." Her insincerity was almost comical. "Listen, I know we haven't really talked, but something amazing has come up, and I immediately thought of you." I waited, saying nothing, letting the silence stretch. "It's Riker," she continued, her voice dropping conspiratorially. "He's got this incredible opportunity, a real game changer this time, a tech startup. It's a sure thing, Zlata, absolutely foolproof. He just needs a little bit of seed capital to get it off the ground, and, well, knowing how well you've done—" "How much?" I cut her off. "Well," she hesitated, "we were thinking 50,000? Just as a loan, of course. He'll pay you back double, triple even, once it takes off. 50,000? The audacity." I almost laughed. "Lana," I said, my voice like ice. "The answer is no." "But Zlata, you don't understand. This is his big break. If he doesn't get this funding, it'll all fall apart. And honestly," her voice took on a whining, accusatory tone, "if you hadn't been so, well, if you'd helped out years ago, with that house money, none of us would be in this position. Mom and Dad are really struggling." There it was, the blame, the entitlement, still there, festering. "My house money, as you call it, built my life, Lana. Something Riker has consistently failed to do with every handout he's ever received. The answer is still no, and lose this number." I hung up before she could reply, my hand surprisingly steady. The call hadn't upset me. Instead, it had stoked that ember, making it glow a little brighter. A loan? A paltry 50,000? No, that wasn't nearly enough. My plans, the ones that had been vague and shadowy, began to take on a sharper, more defined shape. They wanted my help? Oh, they would get it. On my terms, and it would cost them far more than money. Another 2 years drifted by, marked by the steady rhythm of my own life and the increasingly frantic SOS signals from the sinking ship that was my family. Lana's brazen attempt to secure funding for Riker's phantom tech startup had, predictably, gone nowhere. The silence that followed my refusal was, for a while, almost peaceful. Then came the call I'd been half expecting. My mother, Valeria, "Zlata, darling?" Her voice was thin, laced with a tremor I'd never heard before. It was usually so strong, so commanding, so full of accusation. "Hello, Mother," I replied, keeping my tone even. I was in my study, reviewing quarterly reports. I didn't stop highlighting key figures. Oh, Zlata, things have been rather difficult here. A sniffle. Your father and well, we had to move again. Oh? I feigned mild surprise. Aunt Sophia had already given me the rundown. The townhouse near the old mill had been repossessed. Riker, it turned out, had borrowed against it using forged signatures for yet another scheme involving imported luxury handbags that turned out to be cheap knockoffs seized by customs. Yes, Valeria continued, her voice thick with unshed tears. We're in a very small apartment now. It's not what we're used to, Zlata. The neighborhood is dreadful. I could picture it. Marlene had driven past out of curiosity once, reporting back that it was a grim, run-down building overlooking a noisy freeway. That's unfortunate, I said, tapping my pen against the desk. Unfortunate? Zlata, it's a disaster. Your father's health isn't good. The stress is terrible for him. And Riker. Poor Riker. He tries so hard, but luck is just never on his side. I almost choked on my water. Poor Riker. And what about Lana? I asked, just to see what she'd say. Lana is doing her best to support us, but it's a struggle for her, too. She doesn't have your advantages. The implication hung heavy in the air. My advantages. The ones I'd clawed for, tooth and nail, while they'd coddled and enabled their precious son into ruin. Zlata, Valeria's voice dropped, becoming wheedling, manipulative. We were thinking, you have that big, beautiful house, all that space. Surely you remember what family is for? We wouldn't be any trouble, just until we get back on our feet. I let the silence stretch, imagining her on the other end, twisting the phone cord, her face pinched with desperation. The image brought a grim sort of satisfaction. Mother, I said finally, my voice polite, almost gentle. I'm very busy with work right now. I'm afraid I can't really discuss this. I have to go. My team is waiting. But Zlata? I'll call you back when I have a moment. I lied smoothly and hung up. I didn't call back. Later that week I started sketching. Idle doodles at first, on a notepad during a boring conference call. A floor plan of my property. The main house, the garden, and the old, detached garage at the far end of the driveway. It was a relic from when the house was first built, used now for storing lawnmowers and forgotten Christmas decorations. It was structurally sound, but bare concrete floors, no insulation, a single grimy window. My doodles became more precise. Dimensions. Potential placements for basic amenities. A dark what-if scenario began to take shape, a chilling blueprint for a very specific kind of welcome. The final piece of fuel for my simmering plan came, as it often did, via Marlene. We were having our weekly dinner, this time at a new Italian place she'd discovered. You are not going to believe what I heard, she said, leaning forward after the waiter had taken our orders. About? I asked, sipping my wine. Riker, of course. My cousin's hairdresser's sister cleans for a woman who lives in your parents' old neighborhood, and apparently the gossip is flying. Do tell. So, after his latest business, the one with the fake handbags, went spectacularly bust, and your parents lost the townhouse, Riker apparently had a massive meltdown, screaming, throwing things. And get this, Marlene's eyes widened. He told Valeria and Paul, in no uncertain terms, that it was all your fault. I raised an eyebrow. My fault? How does he figure that? Because, Marlene relayed, her voice laced with disbelief, he said you had it easy, that you bought your house with money that should have been his seed capital. He told them you owed them big time for all the support he supposedly missed out on because you were so selfish. And the kicker? He told them they should make you pay up. A cold, hard fury, sharper than any I'd felt in years, shot through me. It wasn't the familiar ache of past betrayal. This was fresh, white-hot rage. Make me pay up? After everything? after they had bled my parents dry with his endless failures and entitlement? The doodles on my notepad suddenly seemed less like a what if and more like a concrete, inevitable future. The ember of my vow roared, just for a moment, into a blazing inferno. Oh, someone was going to pay. But it wouldn't be me. The news of Riker's latest pronouncement, that I owed them and should be made to pay up, settled something deep inside me. The last vestiges of any complicated feelings, any lingering shadows of familial obligation, were burned away. There was only a cold, clear path forward. My sketches of the garage became more detailed, more purposeful. It took another 6 months for the final act of their self-destruction to play out. The source this time was a distant cousin, Maria, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. She called me one evening, her voice hushed and nervous. "Zlata? It's Maria. I don't know if I should be telling you this, but I thought you should know." "Know what, Maria?" I asked, already sensing the familiar scent of disaster. "It's Uncle Paul and Aunt Valeria, and Riker, of course. He got himself into some real trouble this time. Something about investment fraud? I don't know the details, but it's bad. Apparently, he convinced a bunch of people, some pretty shady characters, to invest in a non-existent beachfront development in Costa Rica." I leaned back in my chair. Classic Riker. Always a grand scheme, always someone else's money. "And?" I prompted. "And," Maria sighed, "he used your parents as guarantors, forged their signatures on some documents, apparently. Now the whole thing has collapsed. The investors are furious, and they're coming after Paul and Valeria for everything. They're being evicted from that little apartment, Zlata, like tomorrow. They have nowhere to go." Eviction. The word hung in the air. So it had finally come to this. Rock bottom. "Maria," I said, my voice calm, "why are you telling me this?" "Well," she hesitated, "Aunt Valeria, she's been telling everyone that you'll take them in, that you have that big house and you're her daughter and of course you'll help. They're planning on calling you, Zlata. They're desperate." A slow, cold smile spread across my face. "Thank you for the warning, Maria. I appreciate it. Zlata, I know things have been bad between you all, but they're still family." Her voice was pleading. "Yes, Maria," I said. "They are, and family should always be welcomed. Don't worry." I hung up, the smile still fixed on my lips. The what-if scenarios, the idle sketches, were no longer hypothetical. They were a concrete plan, ready to be executed. My fortress was about to receive its long-expected, thoroughly unwelcome guests. The next morning I made a call. "Morning, Mr. Henderson," I said brightly into the phone. "Zlata Rivera here. I have a small project for you, if you're available on short notice." Mr. Henderson was a local contractor, a grizzled, no-nonsense man who'd done some excellent work on my garden fence last year. "Ms. Rivera, always a pleasure. What can I do for you?" "It's about the old detached garage on my property," I explained. "I need it cleared out, and a few minor modifications, very basic. I need it done today, if possible." "Cleared out? Like a full gut?" No, nothing so drastic. Just tidied, swept. And I need 3 simple cots set up in there, army style if you have them, and a portable camping toilet, the kind you use for festivals. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear Mr. Henderson scratching his head. "Cots and a camping toilet? In the garage? You planning a very rustic guest suite, Ms. Rivera?" "Something like that," I said smoothly. "It's for some unexpected visitors. And one more thing, Mr. Henderson. I need a new, very sturdy lock installed on the garage door, one that can only be opened from the outside with a key, and a deadbolt on the inside of the door leading from my kitchen into the main house. Top quality, please." Another pause, longer this time. "Right," he said finally, his voice carefully neutral. "Cots, camping toilet, new lock on the garage, deadbolt on the kitchen door. Consider it done. My crew can be there by noon." "Excellent, Mr. Henderson. Send the bill to my office." I hung up and walked to my kitchen window, looking out at the garage. It stood there, unassuming, a forgotten outbuilding. Soon it would be their 5-star accommodation, my meticulously prepared welcome. The rage from Riker's reported words had cooled now, banked down into an icy resolve. They wanted me to pay up? Oh, they would see. They would see what the real price of their actions looked like. The suite, as I'd started to call it in my mind, would be ready. Mr. Henderson and his crew were as good as their word. By late afternoon, the old garage had been transformed. Not into anything comfortable, mind you, but into exactly what I'd envisioned. The cobwebs were gone, the concrete floor swept clean. 3 stark metal cots, each with a thin mattress and a single coarse blanket, were lined up against one wall. In the far corner, a chemical toilet stood sentinel, a monument to basic necessity. A single bare bulb hung from the rafters, casting a harsh, unforgiving light. The new lock on the main garage door gleamed. The deadbolt on my kitchen door felt wonderfully solid. I surveyed their handiwork with a grim sense of satisfaction. It was perfect, perfectly awful. The call came just as I was finishing a solitary, peaceful dinner. The caller ID flashed, "Valeria." I let it ring 3 times, savoring the anticipation, before answering with my most pleasant, accommodating tone. "Hello? Zlata? Oh, Zlata, thank God you answered." Valeria's voice was a torrent of frantic relief, laced with an undercurrent of hysteria I'd been expecting. "Darling, it's a nightmare, a complete and utter nightmare." "Mother? What's wrong? You sound upset." I injected a note of mild concern into my voice, picturing her on the other end, probably wringing her hands, Paul hovering uselessly nearby. "Upset? Zlata, we've been evicted, thrown out onto the street like common criminals. That dreadful landlord, he wouldn't listen to reason. We have nowhere to go, absolutely nowhere." Her voice cracked, and I heard a distinct sniffle, quickly followed by what sounded like a theatrical wail. "Evicted?" I echoed, feigning shock. "Oh, Mother, that's terrible. What happened?" "It's Riker," she sobbed. "That poor, unfortunate boy. He was just trying to make something of himself. A little misunderstanding with some business associates. They're being so unreasonable. And now your father and I, and Lana, we're homeless. Can you imagine? Homeless." I could, quite vividly, and the image didn't fill me with the pity she was clearly trying to elicit. "Where is Riker now?" I asked, keeping my voice gentle. "Oh, he has some other arrangements he's trying to make," Valeria said vaguely, a little too quickly. "He's very resourceful, you know. He'll sort something out for himself. But it's us, Zlata, your father, Lana, and me. We have nowhere to turn. Our suitcases are on the pavement." The lie about Riker was so transparent, it was almost insulting. He'd abandoned them, of course, just like he always did when the consequences of his actions came knocking. "That's awful, Mother, truly awful." I paused, letting the silence hang, letting her desperation build. I could almost hear her holding her breath. "Zlata?" she finally whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears and forced humility. "Your house, it's so big. You have all those rooms. We were wondering, we were hoping. Could we possibly, just for a little while, darling, just until we can find our feet? We wouldn't be any trouble at all, I promise. We'd be quiet as mice." Her voice was dripping with a sweetness so artificial it made my teeth ache. The picture of them arriving, expecting tearful forgiveness, expecting to be ushered into my comfortable guest rooms, expecting me to foot the bill for their son's latest catastrophe, was crystal clear in my mind. I took a slow, deliberate breath. "Mother," I said, my voice now smooth as silk, perfectly accommodating. "Of course you can come here. You're my family. Where else would you go?" A choked sob of relief came from the other end. "Oh, Zlata. Oh, thank you, darling, thank you. I knew you wouldn't let us down. I told Paul, I told Lana. Zlata has a good heart. She'll understand. I understand completely, Mother, I said, and for once, it was the absolute truth. Come whenever you're ready. I'll be here. We'll be there as soon as we can get a taxi, she gushed. Oh, Zlata, you're a lifesaver, a true angel. Drive safely, Mother, I said, and hung up. I walked to my living room window, the one overlooking the pristine garden I'd cultivated with such care. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows, and the crimson roses glowed with an almost unnatural intensity. A chilling smile played on my lips. Let them come, I murmured to the empty room, to the silent, waiting house. The suite is almost ready. My heart was beating steadily, a calm, rhythmic drum. There was no anger now, no pain, only a cold, clear sense of purpose. The years of planning, the years of waiting were about to culminate. They were walking willingly into the trap I had so meticulously prepared, and they had no idea. An hour later, a battered taxi pulled up to the curb. I watched from behind the sheer curtains of my living room window as Valeria, Lana, and Paul slowly extricated themselves and their worn suitcases from the vehicle. Valeria was already dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief, a picture of weary tragedy. Lana looked around with a familiar expression of disdain, though it was tinged with a new, anxious uncertainty. Paul, as ever, looked defeated before the battle had even begun, his shoulders slumped, his gaze fixed on the pavement. I waited until they were halfway up my garden path before opening the front door. I'd schooled my features into an expression of cool, polite neutrality. Mother, Lana, Father, I greeted them, my voice even. Welcome. Valeria rushed forward, arms outstretched as if for an embrace. Oh, Zlata, thank you, thank you. You have no idea what this means to us. I sidestepped her intended hug smoothly. Please, come in. They shuffled into my hallway, their eyes darting around, taking in the polished hardwood floors, the tasteful artwork, the general air of quiet prosperity. I saw a flicker of something, envy, resentment, in Lana's eyes before she quickly masked it. Your house is lovely, Zlata, Valeria said, her voice still a little too bright. So spacious. Thank you, I replied. If you'll follow me, I'll show you to your accommodations. I could feel their anticipation, their expectation of soft beds and private bathrooms. I led them through my immaculate kitchen, the aroma of freshly baked bread, a deliberate touch, I admit, hanging in the air. Paul actually sniffed appreciatively. I paused at the newly installed deadbolt on the back door, leading to the garden and, by extension, the garage. With a small, deliberate click, I unlocked it. This way, I said, pushing the door open and stepping out into the cool evening air. I led them down the short garden path towards the detached garage. Confusion began to cloud their faces. Zlata, darling, where are we going? Valeria asked, her voice wavering slightly. The guest rooms are upstairs, aren't they? This is what I have available to one, I said, stopping before the garage door. I produced a single key and unlocked the new sturdy lock Mr. Henderson had installed. I pushed the door open, revealing the stark, cold interior. The single bare bulb cast harsh shadows on the 3 cots and the chemical toilet in the corner. A stunned silence fell. Valeria's jaw literally dropped. Lana stared, her mouth agape, her eyes wide with disbelief and dawning horror. Paul just looked lost. This, I announced, my voice devoid of any warmth, any welcome, is all I can offer. Valeria found her voice first, a strangled shriek. What is this? What is the meaning of this, Zlata? How dare you? Lana, recovering quickly, pointed a trembling finger at the cots. You expect us to sleep in there? On those things? With a bucket for a toilet? Are you insane? It's clean, I said calmly, and dry, and secure. This is an outrage, Valeria shrieked, her face flushing a dangerous shade of purple. After everything we've been through, after all we've done for you. Done for me? I repeated, my voice dropping, taking on an icy edge that made even Valeria flinch. "Let's talk about what you've done for me, Mother. Do you remember that day, years ago, in my first house, the empty one? Do you remember what you screamed at me then?" Her eyes darted nervously. I don't recall." "Oh, I do," I said, my voice low and clear. "You called me selfish. You said the money for my house should have gone to Riker. You said I didn't deserve it." I turned to Lana. "And you, Lana, you sneered and told me I didn't deserve my house. Remember that? Small and empty, like your social life, I believe, were your exact words." Lana paled, her bravado deflating. "Perhaps," I continued, my gaze sweeping over their horrified faces, "you don't deserve comfort either. Perhaps this is all you've earned." "This isn't right, Zlata," Paul finally mumbled, his voice barely a whisper, his eyes pleading. "This isn't kind." I rounded on him, the years of his silent complicity fueling my cold anger. "Kind? Were you kind, Father, when you stood by and watched them tear me apart? When your silence was louder than their screams? Your silence then bought you this silence from me now. These are the only terms. No access to the main house. You can take it or you can leave it." Lana, her face contorted with rage, suddenly lunged at me, her hand raised to slap. I sidestepped her easily, her momentum carrying her stumbling a few paces. "Don't even think about it, Lana," I warned, my voice deadly calm. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the single key to the garage and a neatly printed list. "Here is the key to your suite," I said, holding it out. Paul numbly took it. "And this," I added, handing him the list, "is a list of local homeless shelters and their contact numbers. You have 1 hour to decide. My property, my rules. Just like it was my down payment. My house, my rules, back then." Without another word, I turned my back on their stunned, furious faces, walked back into my warm, luxurious kitchen, and locked the deadbolt firmly behind me. The satisfying thud of the bolt sliding home was music to my ears. I poured myself a glass of wine, the good stuff I usually saved for celebrations, and settled into my comfortable armchair in the living room. From my window, I had a clear view of the garage. The single bare bulb cast a stark, yellowish glow out of its grimy window. I could hear raised voices, Valeria's shrill tones clearly distinguishable even through the closed kitchen door and across the garden. Lana's angry shouts punctuated her mother's tirade. Paul's voice was a low, inaudible rumble. They argued for a good 45 minutes. I watched, sipping my wine, a strange calm settling over me. There were moments of furious gesturing, Lana storming back and forth in the small patch of light outside the garage door, Valeria wringing her hands. Paul mostly stood, head bowed. At one point, Lana kicked one of their suitcases. It skidded across the concrete driveway. Then, as the hour mark approached, I saw a shift. The shouting subsided, replaced by a defeated quiet. Lana picked up her suitcase. Paul, after a moment, picked up his and Valeria's. Valeria stood stiffly, her back to my house, but I could imagine the expression of utter humiliation on her face. Without a single glance towards the garage or towards my warm, well-lit home, they trudged back down the driveway, their shoulders slumped, their movements heavy with defeat. They didn't even try the garage door. They just left, disappearing into the darkness of the street. I watched until the taillights of another taxi, presumably one they'd called, vanished around the corner. Then I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. It was done. A complex wave of emotions washed over me. There was a profound, grim satisfaction, yes. A sense of justice, harsh but undeniably served. But there was also an emptiness, the quiet that follows a storm, the recognition that the scars, though avenged, remained. The victory was real, but it wasn't joyous. It was just final. Marlene came over the next evening, a bottle of my favorite Pinot Noir in hand. "So," she said, settling onto my sofa, "spill. How did the family reunion go?" I recounted the events, from their desperate call to their defeated departure. Marlene listened intently, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Wow, Zlata," she said softly. "That's intense, even for you." "Was it too much?" I asked, the question genuine. Marlene considered. "It was harsh," she admitted. "Definitely harsh. But honestly, after everything they put you through, that initial ambush, the years of entitlement and blame, no, I don't think it was too much. They built that garage, Zlata, brick by miserable brick, with their own actions. You just handed them the key." Her words were a comfort, an affirmation I hadn't realized I needed. "Riker, of course, was a no-show," I added. Valeria tried to cover for him, but it was obvious. "Predictable," Marlene snorted. "He'll have landed on his feet somewhere, probably already spinning his next sob story to some other unfortunate soul." A few days later, Aunt Sophia called again, her voice buzzing with ill-concealed gossip. "Zlata, you will not believe it. Valeria, Paul, and Lana are staying in that awful emergency housing unit over by the industrial park, the one with the shared bathrooms. Can you imagine? Valeria Rivera in a place like that. Apparently Riker completely vanished, left them high and dry. Again." "Is that so?" I said, my voice neutral. I felt nothing. No pity, no triumph, just a distant sort of finality. They were out of my orbit, their problems no longer capable of touching me. The revenge hadn't magically erased the pain of that day in my empty house. It hadn't healed the old wounds completely, but it had redrawn the lines. It had reclaimed my power. It had brought a harsh, necessary closure. They had faced the direct consequences of their choices, not filtered through my unwilling intervention or their manipulative pleas. I looked around my beautiful home, at the sunlight streaming through the clean windows, at the books lining the shelves, the art on the walls, the comfortable furniture I'd chosen with such care. This house, my sanctuary, my fortress, was finally, truly, just mine, untainted by their demands, their expectations, their bitter presence. They made their choices then and now, I thought, swirling the last of my coffee in my favorite mug. And I made mine. This house was never about them needing rescue or me needing their approval. It was always about me, my strength, my resilience, the life I built, not just in spite of them, but for myself. And that, I realized, was the truest piece of all.
The Thompson family had a reputation to maintain. Old money, social connections, and impeccable taste were the pillars upon which Margaret Thompson built her identity. So when her only son David fell in love with me, a seemingly ordinary kindergarten teacher from a town no one in their circle had heard of, she made her disapproval crystal clear. "She seems nice," Margaret had said after our first meeting, the word nice carrying the weight of profound disappointment. "But honestly, David, what could you possibly have in common with someone so simple?" David defended me, of course. He loved that I was unpretentious and genuine, qualities in short supply among the social climbers he'd grown up around. But Margaret's campaign of subtle undermining continued for the 2 years we dated, reaching its peak when David proposed with his grandmother's ring. "Congratulations," Margaret had said coldly over the phone when David shared the news. "I suppose we'll need to start planning immediately. There's so much Sarah will need to learn about how things are done in our world." Our world. As if I were an alien visiting from another planet rather than someone born just 50 miles away. The wedding planning became Margaret's battlefield. Every decision, the venue, the caterer, the flowers, became an opportunity to highlight the gulf between my limited experience and the Thompson family standards. I tried to remain gracious, reminding myself that this was about marrying David, not winning his mother's approval. Then came the dress shopping expedition. Margaret had insisted we visit an exclusive bridal salon in the city where, she informed me, Thompson women had been selecting their wedding gowns for generations. The appointment had been scheduled months in advance, and Margaret had arranged for several of her closest friends to accompany us, women whose names regularly appeared in society pages and charity gala photographs. "It's tradition," she explained when I suggested keeping the shopping party smaller. "These women have known David since he was a child. Their opinion matters." What she really meant, of course, was that my opinion mattered less. The salon was exactly as intimidating as I'd expected. All crystal chandeliers and champagne flutes, with gowns displayed like museum pieces. The owner greeted Margaret with air kisses and exclamations about how long it had been since they'd seen each other. "And this must be the bride," she said, examining me with a professional smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Yes, this is Sarah," Margaret replied. "We'll need something that flatters her figure. Perhaps something with sleeves, and nothing too fashion-forward. Something classic to elevate her natural simplicity." I bit my tongue as the salon staff measured me and discussed my challenging proportions as if I weren't present. Margaret's friends sipped champagne and reminisced about their own wedding dresses, each apparently more exquisite than the last. After trying on 7 different gowns, each met with subtle grimaces and whispered consultations among Margaret's committee, I was exhausted and close to tears. "Perhaps we should continue another day," the salon owner suggested delicately. "Finding the perfect gown can be a process." That's when my phone rang. It was my mother. "Sarah, honey, I know you're busy with the Thompson dress shopping today, but I wanted to let you know that package we discussed arrived. It's even more beautiful than we hoped." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "That's wonderful news, Mom. I'll stop by later to see it." When I ended the call, Margaret was watching me with narrow-eyed suspicion. "A package? Something for the wedding?" she asked. "Just something my mother wanted me to see," I replied vaguely. "Speaking of which, I should probably wrap up here. Thank you all for your time and input." Margaret looked affronted. "But we haven't found anything suitable yet." "Sarah, this isn't like picking up something from a department store. A proper wedding gown requires time and consideration." "I understand," I said, summoning my kindergarten teacher patience. "And I appreciate everyone's help today. But I think I need some time to reflect on the options." 2 weeks later, Margaret called an emergency meeting at her home to discuss what she termed concerning developments with the wedding planning. David and I arrived to find her in the sunroom, surrounded by wedding magazines and sample table settings. "Sarah," she began without preamble, "I've heard disturbing rumors that you've purchased a wedding dress without proper consultation. Some off-the-rack item from a boutique in your hometown?" I took a deep breath. "I have found my dress, yes." Margaret's perfectly manicured hand fluttered to her throat. "But we haven't approved anything. The salon was preparing a selection of appropriate options for our next appointment." "I appreciate that, but I found something I love." "Well," Margaret said with forced brightness, "I'm sure it's nice. Perhaps we can have it altered by professionals to make it more suitable." "Where did you find this dress?" "Actually, it was my mother who found it." Margaret exchanged knowing glances with her friend Beatrice, who had apparently been summoned for moral support. "I see. Well, that explains a lot. I'm sure your mother meant well, but she couldn't possibly understand the standards expected at a Thompson wedding." David, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. "Mom, I'm sure Sarah's dress is beautiful, and ultimately, it's her decision." "Of course it is," Margaret replied with a tight smile. "I simply want to make sure Sarah doesn't feel uncomfortable when she's standing next to proper society brides in their photos. People notice these things." "Perhaps," Beatrice suggested with fake helpfulness, "we could see this dress, just to get a sense of what alterations might be needed." I hesitated, then nodded. "Actually, I brought it with me today. I thought you might want to see it." Margaret's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "You brought it here?" "Today. It's in the car. I'll go get it." When I returned carrying a garment bag, Margaret had composed herself, clearly prepared to be diplomatic about whatever fashion disaster she expected to emerge. David squeezed my hand reassuringly as I unzipped the bag. The dress that emerged was a masterpiece of understated elegance, an ivory silk column with delicate beadwork along the neckline and a supple train. Even on the hanger, it was clearly something special. "What a shame your family couldn't afford something better," my future mother-in-law sneered, examining my wedding dress with obvious disappointment. "Everyone will know you don't belong in our circle." I stayed silent as she continued her critique. "It looks like a discount store knockoff," she declared, reaching for the collar. "The beadwork is clumsy, and this silk is clearly synthetic." When she flipped the collar to check the label, her face went completely white. "This is impossible." "Because there On the designer label was a name even Margaret Thompson approached with reverence: Alessandra Ricci, the Italian designer whose creations were worn by royalty and whose waiting list was years long. "There must be some mistake," she stammered. "This can't be authentic. How would you possibly?" "It's genuine," I confirmed quietly. "A gift from my godmother." "Your godmother?" Beatrice echoed incredulously. "Who exactly is your godmother?" Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. David went to answer it, returning moments later with my mother and a woman Margaret clearly recognized immediately. "Elena?" Margaret gasped, rising to her feet. "Elena Ricci? What are you doing here?" The woman who entered, elegant silver-haired, dressed in simple but exquisite linen, smiled warmly. "Maggie Thompson. It's been, 30 years? Still intimidating young brides, I see. Some things never change." My mother stepped forward, squeezing my shoulders supportively. "I believe you've been getting to know my daughter, though perhaps not as well as you thought." Margaret looked between them in growing confusion. "I don't understand. How do you know Elena Ricci?" "Elena, the Elena Ricci, sister of Alessandra and co-founder of their fashion empire," laughed lightly. "Catherine and I were roommates at university before I moved back to Milan. She was the first American to model for our early collections." "Model?" Margaret repeated weakly, staring at my mother, the kindergarten teacher's aide from a small town who apparently had an entirely different past than the one Margaret had assumed. "Just for a few years," my mother said modestly, "before I met Sarah's father and decided to move back home. But Elena and I remained close. She's Sarah's godmother, and when she heard about the wedding, I insisted on designing her dress personally," Elena finished. "Catherine was like a sister during those early struggling years. Her daughter is family." Margaret sank back into her chair, speechless for perhaps the first time in her life. Her friend Beatrice was staring at my mother with newfound fascination. "You're Catherine Jensen, the face of Ricci's breakthrough '89 collection. I still have those magazine spreads. You disappeared from the fashion world so suddenly." My mother smiled. "I found another calling, one that made me happier than the fashion world ever did." I felt David's arm slip around my waist as we watched his mother attempting to recalibrate everything she thought she knew. "So you see, Margaret," I said gently, "while I appreciate your guidance with the wedding planning, I do have some resources of my own. And more importantly, I know exactly who I am and where I come from, even if you've made some incorrect assumptions." The silence that followed was broken by Elena, who clapped her hands decisively. "Shall we discuss the rest of the wedding party? I've brought some sample designs for the mother of the groom. Something that would complement Sarah's dress beautifully, Maggie, if you're interested." 2 days later, David and I were having dinner at my parents' modest but comfortable home, the home where I'd grown up, surrounded by photographs of my mother's brief but significant modeling career alongside pictures of school plays and soccer tournaments. I've never seen my mother speechless before. David marveled, helping my father grill vegetables in the backyard. "She's been almost deferential since meeting your mom and Elena." My father laughed. "Catherine has that effect on people when they discover her past. She never made a big deal of it. That's not her style. But she was quite something in her day." "Still is," I called from the patio table where I was helping my mother set up dinner. My mother smiled. "The funny thing is, Margaret and I probably would have found common ground if she'd bothered to ask rather than assume. We both left high-profile worlds to focus on family. We both value education and community, but she was so busy sizing me up for where I fit in her social hierarchy that she never saw me at all." The wedding planning shifted dramatically after what David jokingly called the dress revelation. Margaret didn't exactly become warm, but her approach changed from condescension to careful respect. She consulted rather than dictated, and occasionally even deferred to my mother's connections, which turned out to include not just Elena Ricci, but several other notable figures from her previous life. On the day of the wedding, as my mother helped me into the exquisite dress that had caused such a stir, I reflected on the unexpected gift Margaret's snobbery had delivered, the chance to bridge two parts of my family history and to claim my own identity in the process. "You know," my mother said, adjusting my veil, "in all my years wearing runway creations, I never felt as beautiful in a dress as I know you will today. Because today you're marrying for love, not for appearance." When I walked down the aisle toward David, I passed Margaret in the front row. For once, her focus wasn't on how things looked to others or whether standards were being maintained. Instead, there were tears in her eyes as she watched her son's face light up at the sight of me. At the reception, Elena Ritchie raised a toast that perfectly captured the journey we'd all taken. To David and Sarah, and to the two families joining today, may you all discover, as I have throughout my career, that true elegance comes not from labels or pedigrees, but from authenticity, kindness, and the courage to see beyond first impressions. Margaret, seated beside Elena at the head table, actually clinked glasses with my mother at these words. Later, as David and I danced under the stars, he whispered, "You know what my favorite part of that dress is?" "What?" I asked, expecting him to comment on the exquisite beadwork or perfect fit. That underneath all its fancy pedigree, it's being worn by the down-to-earth kindergarten teacher I fell in love with. The one who knows exactly who she is, with or without designer labels. I kissed him, grateful for a partner who had seen me clearly from the beginning, something his mother was only now learning to do. 6 months after the wedding, Margaret invited my mother and me to tea at her home. The pretension that had characterized our earlier visits was noticeably absent as she led us to a sun-dappled patio rather than a formal drawing room. "I've been doing some thinking," she said, uncharacteristically hesitant, "about first impressions and hidden depths, about how we present ourselves to the world and what we choose to reveal." My mother and I exchanged surprised glances as Margaret continued. "Catherine, when we first met, I made assumptions based on your current life, never imagining your past experiences. I judged Sarah through the same limited lens." She paused, clearly finding this difficult. "The truth is, before I married into the Thompson family, my background was much closer to yours than anyone in my social circle knows. My father owned a hardware store. I worked as a sales clerk through college." This revelation stunned us both. Margaret Thompson, the arbiter of old money social standards, had reinvented herself just as thoroughly as my mother had, but in the opposite direction. When I met Philip Thompson, I was determined to fit into his world perfectly. I studied how the right people dressed, spoke, entertained. I erased every trace of my origins until I convinced even myself that I'd always belonged. She looked at me directly. "When David brought you home, Sarah, I didn't see a wonderful woman who made my son happy. I saw a reminder of everything I'd worked to distance myself from. I was terrified you might expose the fraud I sometimes still feel like." Margaret. My mother said gently, "We all create different versions of ourselves throughout our lives. There's no shame in transformation." "The shame," Margaret replied, "is in denying where we came from, in treating others as less worthy because of where we think they belong in some imaginary hierarchy." She reached across the table and, in an unprecedented gesture, covered my hand with hers. "I hope you'll give me the chance to be a better mother-in-law than I've been so far, and perhaps a friend in time." As we drove home afterward, my mother and I tried to process this unexpected turn. "Do you think she's sincere?" I asked. "Yes," my mother said thoughtfully. "Recognition is a powerful thing. Sometimes people need to see themselves reflected in unexpected places before they can acknowledge their own truth. Like seeing a kindergarten teacher in an Alessandra Ritchie original?" My mother laughed. "Exactly, but the dress didn't change who you are, Sarah. It just helped Margaret see past her own prejudice. And that, perhaps, was the greatest gift of all. Not the designer dress or the social connections, but the reminder that our true worth has nothing to do with labels, whether they're sewn into a wedding gown or attached to a family name." A year later, when I discovered I was pregnant, Margaret was among the first people we told. Her eyes filled with tears as she hugged me, a genuine embrace without concern for appearances. "This child," she said, "will have the best of all worlds. Thompson determination, Jensen creativity, and parents who know the value of authenticity." As we left her home that evening, David squeezed my hand. "Who would have thought a wedding dress could change so much?" "Not the dress," I corrected him, "the willingness to look beyond it." The Hamilton Hotel had stood on the corner of Fifth and Pine for over a century, its red brick facade a testament to Seattle's golden age. From my office on the mezzanine, I could see the construction cranes circling like vultures, modern glass towers rising on every side of our little piece of history. Soon they'd be coming for us too, Or so they thought. I'm Sarah Hamilton, the last of the Hamilton hoteliers, though that title didn't mean much anymore. Our once brand establishment had been struggling for years, unable to compete with the luxury chains and boutique hotels that now dominated downtown. At least that's what everyone believed. Miss Hamilton, Maria, our head housekeeper for 30 years, knocked softly. The people from Apex Development are here, again. I sighed, straightening my jacket. This would be their third visit this week. Send them up. Marcus Chen and Victoria Ross swept into my office like they owned it already, which, according to the papers spread across my desk, they soon would. Apex Development had made what they called a generous offer of $2 million for the property, well below market value but enough to pressure a supposedly failing business. Sarah, Marcus smiled, all perfect teeth and expensive suit. Have you had a chance to review the final offer? I glanced at the contract, thinking about the secret I discovered just last night while going through my grandfather's old files. I have some concerns about the historic preservation clauses. Victoria waved her hand dismissively. The building's not officially landmarked. Once the sale goes through, Apex can proceed with our development plans without restriction. That's what they thought. But Grandfather Hamilton had been cleverer than anyone knew. The hotel's losing money every month, Marcus added, his smile turning predatory. Property taxes in this area have tripled. How long can you keep operating at a loss? He wasn't wrong about the challenges. The Hamilton had been struggling ever since my father's death 5 years ago. We'd lost corporate accounts to newer hotels, our maintenance costs were rising, and the property taxes in booming downtown Seattle were crushing. But we weren't quite as desperate as they believed. $2 million is more than fair, Victoria pressed, especially considering the building's condition. The electrical needs updating, the plumbing is ancient, and let's be honest, the whole place needs a complete overhaul. I touched the antique desk that had been my grandfather's, remembering the hours I'd spent here as a child, listening to his stories about the hotel's glory days, about the secret he protected, waiting for the right moment. The Hamilton has been more than just a hotel, I said quietly. It's been a part of Seattle's history for over 100 years. My grandfather used to tell me about the speakeasy in the basement during Prohibition, the jazz musicians who played in our ballroom, the secret meetings during World War II. Fascinating history, Marcus cut in, not bothering to hide his boredom. But history doesn't pay the bills. Our offer expires at the end of the week. After that, well, he shrugged. Banks aren't very sentimental about foreclosures. They left, leaving behind the contract and the weight of their threats. As soon as the door closed, I pulled out the document I found last night, my grandfather's original deed to the property, dated 1973. The deed with a very special clause that Apex's lawyers had somehow missed. My phone buzzed. A text from Tom, my best friend since college and now one of Seattle's top real estate attorneys. Found it. The clause is still valid. Call me ASAP. I smiled, remembering my grandfather's words from years ago. Sometimes, Sarah, the best move in business is to let your opponents think they've won, right up until the moment they discover they've lost everything. The Hamilton had secrets that went far deeper than its history, secrets that would turn Apex's $100 million development plans to dust. My father had never known about the clause. Grandfather had taken that secret to his grave, leaving only a letter for me to find when the time was right. Last night, sorting through his old files in preparation for the sale, I'd finally discovered it. My dearest Sarah, the letter began, if you're reading this, someone's trying to take our hotel. But what they don't know is that in 1973, when Seattle was dying and downtown property was worthless, I added a special covenant to the deed. The Hamilton Hotel can never be demolished or significantly altered without unanimous approval from all living members of the Hamilton family, not just majority approval. Unanimous. And the covenant runs with the land, binding all future owners in perpetuity. I touched the original deed, its pages yellowed but its legal language crystal clear. Any attempt to demolish or fundamentally alter the hotel would require my approval. An approval I would never give. But that wasn't even the biggest secret the Hamilton held. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. Come in. Maria entered, closing the door carefully behind her. Miss Sarah. The men from the Historical Society are here. They've finished their inspection of the basement. I stood up quickly, and she smiled, her eyes twinkling. They found it. Exactly where your grandfather said it would be. The original Shanghai tunnels connecting to 3 other buildings. They're intact, and they're spectacular. The Shanghai tunnels, a network of underground passages that ran beneath downtown Seattle, used during Prohibition and rumored to be part of the Underground Railroad. Most have been destroyed or sealed off during later development, but according to my grandfather's letters, the Hamilton's tunnels have been preserved, hidden behind false walls in the basement. Tunnels that, according to the Historical Society's preliminary assessment, would make the hotel eligible for National Historic Landmark status. Status that would make it virtually impossible for any developer to touch the property. My phone buzzed again. Tom, sending documents proving that the covenant was ironclad. Apex's lawyers missed it completely. His message read, "They have no idea what they're walking into." I sat back in my grandfather's chair, looking out at the city he'd loved so much. The Seattle of his day was almost gone, replaced by glass and steel monuments to progress. But the Hamilton had endured, protecting its secrets until they were needed most. The hotel wasn't failing. I just made it look that way. Every lost corporate account had been carefully documented. Every maintenance issue strategically exaggerated. The property taxes were high, but the hotel's true financial situation was far from desperate. My grandfather had taught me that sometimes you had to lose a little to win big. Apex thought they were buying a struggling hotel for a bargain price. Instead, they were walking into a trap that would cost them millions. Tomorrow, I would sign their contract, playing the part of the defeated heiress forced to sell her family legacy. I'd watch them celebrate their victory, planning their luxury condos and boutique shops. Then, when demolition day came, I would show them the covenant, the historical designation, the true value of the property they thought they were stealing. The Hamilton had one more story to tell, and this time, the ending would be written by a Hamilton. The signing ceremony was everything Apex Development had hoped for. A media event showcasing their latest acquisition in downtown Seattle's transformation. Local news cameras captured my reluctant signature on the sales contract, Marcus Chen's triumphant handshake, and Victoria Ross's perfectly rehearsed speech about progress and urban renewal. The Hamilton Hotel has been a beloved landmark, she announced to the gathered reporters. But it's time for Seattle to embrace the future. Apex's new luxury development will revitalize this entire block. I sat quietly, playing my part as the defeated heiress. Only Tom, standing beside me as my attorney, knew I was fighting back a smile. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Apex's team swarmed the hotel, conducting surveys and making plans. They never noticed that every routine inspection by the Historical Society was carefully documented, building our case for landmark status. Or that every architectural assessment was quietly copied to my files, proving the building's structural integrity. Then came the morning they'd all been waiting for. Demolition day. I arrived early, watching the construction crews set up their equipment. Marcus and Victoria stood with their project managers, reviewing plans and checking schedules. They didn't even notice me until I walked up with Tom and Maria. "Sarah," Marcus nodded dismissively. "Come to say goodbye to the old place." "Actually," I smiled, "I'm here to protect my property." Victoria frowned. "Your property? You signed it over to Apex 3 weeks ago." "About that." Tom stepped forward, opening his briefcase. "You might want to take a look at these documents first." The next hour was chaos. Apex's lawyers huddled over the original deed, faces growing paler as they confirmed the covenant's validity. Historical Society representatives presented their findings about the Shanghai tunnels, complete with photographs and preservation requirements. City officials arrived with preliminary landmark designation papers. "This is impossible," Marcus sputtered, waving the deed. "Our lawyers checked everything." "Apparently not carefully enough," Tom replied calmly. "The covenant is ironclad and runs with the land. You can't demolish or significantly alter the hotel without unanimous approval from all living Hamiltons." "Fine," Victoria snapped. "Name your price." I smiled, channeling my grandfather's quiet confidence. "It's not about price. The Hamilton isn't for sale, not for demolition anyway. But I do have a proposition for you." Over the next 2 hours, in my grandfather's old office, I laid out my plan. The Hamilton would remain standing, its historic facade and crucial architectural elements preserved. But the interior would be carefully modernized, combining classic elegance with contemporary luxury. The Shanghai tunnels would become a unique tourist attraction, drawing history enthusiasts from around the world. The property is worth $100 million as a teardown, I explained, showing them the market analyses and projections. But as a unique historic luxury hotel with an exclusive underground tour, we're looking at potential revenues of $50 million annually. Marcus leaned forward despite himself. We're developers, not hoteliers. No, I agreed. But I am, fifth generation, in fact. The Hamilton hasn't been failing. I've been deliberately operating at reduced capacity while documenting everything. Our reputation in the industry is still sterling. Our customer base is still loyal. And now, with the tunnels and historic designation, we have something no other hotel in Seattle can offer. Victoria's eyes narrowed. What exactly are you proposing? A partnership. Apex provides the capital for renovations, following historical preservation guidelines. The Hamilton Hotel provides the property, the expertise, and the unique historical assets. We split the profits 50-50. And if we refuse? Marcus challenged. Tom smiled. Then you own a property you can't develop, can't demolish, and can't sell for anywhere near what you paid. Meanwhile, the historical designation will require expensive maintenance and preservation measures. The negotiations lasted well into the night. By morning we had a deal. Apex would fund a $50 million historical renovation, preserving the hotel's character while modernizing its amenities. The Shanghai tunnels would be restored and open for tours. Most importantly, the Hamilton would remain a hotel operated by its original family. 1 month later, I stood in the grand lobby watching the restoration work begin. The original marble floors were being carefully cleaned, the brass fixtures polished to their former glory. Upstairs, rooms were being elegantly updated while maintaining their historic charm. Maria appeared at my side, smiling at the activity. Your grandfather would be proud. He planned it all, I said softly. The covenant, the hidden tunnels, even the timing. He knew someday someone would try to tear down his life's work, so he made sure they couldn't. The hotel reopened 6 months later to rave reviews. History meets luxury, the Seattle Times declared. The Hamilton Hotel reveals underground secrets, wrote the Travel Channel. Our occupancy rate hit 95% within weeks. Marcus and Victoria, to their credit, adapted quickly to our new partnership. They discovered that preserving history could be as profitable as destroying it, sometimes more so. The Shanghai Tunnel tours became the hottest ticket in Seattle tourism. One evening, as I sat in my grandfather's office watching the sunset paint the city gold, I found another letter hidden in his desk. This one was dated just days before his death. My dearest Sarah, it read, by now you've saved the Hamilton and discovered its true value. But the real treasure isn't in the tunnels or the covenant or even the hotel itself. It's in understanding that progress doesn't always mean demolishing the past. Sometimes it means building on its foundation, preserving what matters while adapting to change. You've done that beautifully. The Hamilton isn't just a hotel. It's a bridge between centuries, a keeper of stories, a reminder that some things are worth saving. I trust you'll keep its secrets, preserve its legacy, and when the time comes, pass on its lessons to the next generation. With pride and love, grandfather. I touched the antique desk, thinking about the layers of history beneath my fingers. Outside, modern Seattle stretched toward the sky, glass towers reflecting the setting sun. But here in the Hamilton, past and present have found a way to coexist, each making the other stronger. Today, the Hamilton Hotel stands as proof that progress doesn't always mean destruction. Our rooms combine historic charm with modern luxury. The Shanghai tunnels draw tourists and history buffs from around the world. Even Apex has embraced our vision, using the Hamilton success as a model for historic preservation projects in other cities. Marcus still jokes about how thoroughly I outmaneuvered them. We thought we were buying a teardown, he'd admitted at our last board meeting. Instead, we bought into a legacy. The construction cranes still circle downtown Seattle, but they no longer feel like vultures. Change is inevitable. But some things, history, family, integrity, endure. The Hamilton protected its secrets until they were needed most, just as my grandfather protected his greatest lesson. Sometimes the best way to build the future is to preserve the past. Every evening, I walked through the hotel just as my grandfather did, greeting guests, checking details, ensuring the Hamilton standards never waver. The original key rack still hangs behind the front desk, though the keys are now electronic. The grandfather clock in the lobby still chimes the hours, its brass face gleaming. And somewhere below, in the restored Shanghai tunnels, tourists gather to hear stories of Seattle's past. They say every historic building has its secrets. The Hamilton's secret was that it was never just a hotel. It was a testament to the power of patience, preservation, and the quiet strength of those who protect what matters most. As for me, I'm just the latest in a long line of Hamilton hoteliers, keeping our legacy alive one story at a time. And someday, when another developer comes calling with dreams of glass towers and profit margins, they'll learn what Apex learned. Some things are worth more than money, some buildings hold more than memories, and some battles are won not with force, but with foresight. The Hamilton stands ready for its next century, its red brick facade a proud reminder that not all progress requires destruction. Sometimes the greatest victory is simply standing your ground, protecting what matters, and proving that the best stories are the ones that endure. Chen's Marketplace had been a fixture in Seattle's retail landscape for 30 years. What started as my father's small corner store had grown into a chain of 12 upscale supermarkets known for their quality imported goods and traditional customer service. But as I stood in our flagship store's management office, watching my brother David's face turn red with anger, I knew one era was about to end. "Your digital transformation nonsense stops now," David snapped, waving a printout of my latest proposal. "We're a family business, Sarah. Our customers come here for the personal touch, not, what did you call it? Omnichannel retail experiences. My name is Sarah Chen, and at 32, I was about to be fired from my family's business, not because I was wrong, but because I was right too soon. The market is changing. I tried one last time. Online grocery delivery grew 400% last year alone. If we don't adapt, enough." David slammed his hand on the desk. "You've wasted hundreds of thousands on your pet projects, mobile apps, delivery partnerships, inventory automation. None of it fits our brand." I glanced at Dad, sitting quietly in the corner. James Chen had built this business from nothing after immigrating from China, but lately he'd stepped back, letting David run things. My brother had always been his golden child, the one who thought exactly like him. "Dad," I said softly, "you taught us that innovation keeps businesses alive. Remember when you revolutionized Asian grocery imports in the 90s? This is the same thing. The world is changing." Dad's face remained impassive. "Some changes aren't worth making, Sarah. Our customers like things the way they are." "Really?" I pulled up sales figures on my tablet. "Is that why our revenue has dropped 15% in the last quarter? Why our customer base is aging? Why Whole Foods and Amazon Fresh are eating into our market share? Because you've distracted us from our core business," David shouted. "While you've been playing with your tech toys, our traditional operations have suffered. Well, it ends today." He pulled out a formal letter. "The board, which you'd know includes Dad and me as majority shareholders, has voted to terminate your employment, effective immediately. We're also canceling all technology initiatives and returning to our traditional business model." My hands shook slightly as I took the letter. 10 years of work of trying to drive our family business into the digital age ended with 2 signatures. "Security will escort you out," David continued, pressing a button on his desk. "Your access to all company systems has already been revoked." I looked at Dad again, seeing not anger but something worse. Disappointment. He'd never understood why his daughter, with her Stanford MBA, couldn't just accept the old ways of doing business. "You'll regret this," I said quietly, gathering my things. "Not because you fired me, but because you're choosing to be blind to the future." "The only thing I regret," David replied, "is letting you waste so much time and money on your tech fantasies. Chen's Marketplace is about tradition, about personal service, not apps and algorithms." 2 security guards appeared at the door. As they led me through the store, past employees I'd worked with for years, I held my head high. Let them see. Let them remember. Only when I reached my car did I allow myself to smile. Poor David. So confident in his victory, so certain he'd stopped my tech fantasies just in time. He had no idea what was really happening. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus, my secret partner and former head of it at Chen's. Everything transferred before they cut access. Project Phoenix is ready. Perfect timing. For the past 18 months, while fighting my losing battle to modernize Chen's marketplace, I've been building something on the side. A new kind of retail platform that combined the best of traditional grocery with cutting-edge technology. Every failed proposal to my family had actually been a test run. Every rejected innovation refined and improved in secret. The Seattle office of my startup, Phoenix Market, looked nothing like Chen's traditional stores. Housed in a converted warehouse, it hummed with the energy of developers, data scientists, and retail innovators. The space my family would have called industrial and cold was actually the command center of a retail revolution. Status report, I called out, entering the main floor. Mobile app downloads exceeding projections, Lisa, my head of digital, reported. Early access customers love the AI-powered shopping lists and recipe integration. Delivery network is ready, Marcus added. Fleet of electric vans fully automated and tested. We can guarantee 1-hour delivery across the entire Seattle metro area. I nodded, watching our systems track inventory, predict demand patterns, and optimize delivery routes in real time. Everything my family had rejected as unnecessary technology was here, working perfectly. What about the Amazon integration? I asked. Conference call in 10 minutes, Marcus grinned. Their exec team is excited. Nobody's ever pitched them a partnership quite like this. While Chen's marketplace struggled to compete with Amazon Fresh, I developed a different approach. Instead of fighting the e-commerce giant, we become their premium local partner, handling specialty and ethnic groceries through their platform while maintaining our own independent operation. My phone buzzed again. A news alert about Chen's marketplace's latest quarterly results. More declining sales, more lost market share. The stock price was dropping as investors worried of the company's failure to adapt to changing market conditions. Sarah, Marcus appeared at my office door. Your brother's on CNBC right now talking about their return to traditional values. I turned up the volume, watching David defend his decision to abandon all digital initiatives. Chen's marketplace is about personal service, about knowing our customers, he declared proudly. We're not going to chase tech trends at the expense of our core values. The interviewer pressed him, but with online grocery delivery growing exponentially, how will you compete? Our customers come to us for the experience, David insisted. They want to select their own produce, to talk to knowledgeable staff. You can't replicate that online. I smiled, thinking of our AI-powered product recommendation system that knew customers' preferences better than any human could. Our computer vision technology that could select better produce than most experienced staff. Time for the Amazon call, Marcus reminded me. The next hour would change everything, but not just for me, for the entire retail industry. David thought he was protecting our family's legacy by clinging to the past. He was about to learn that true legacy isn't about preserving old methods, but about evolving to serve customers better. Ready to launch? Lisa asked as I headed to the conference room. I thought about Dad's face when he signed my termination letter, about David's smugness in thinking he'd stop change from coming. Ready, I confirmed. Time to show them what the future of retail really looks like. The next few hours would transform not just my career, but the entire concept of what a family business could become. But that's another story, one that begins with a simple announcement that would make my brother choke on his morning coffee. Amazon announces revolutionary partnership with Phoenix Market, transforming local grocery delivery. The morning after the Amazon announcement, I sat in Phoenix Market's command center watching our systems light up with activity. The partnership news had broken at 6 a.m. Eastern Time. By 9 a.m. Pacific, our app downloads had crashed our servers twice. 20,000 new customers in 3 hours, Lisa reported, monitoring the analytics dashboard. Social media's exploding. Everyone wants to know how a startup nobody's heard of landed an exclusive Amazon partnership. I smiled, thinking of the 18 months of secret development that had made this possible. While my family focused on traditional retail metrics, we'd built something that redefined the entire grocery experience. Sarah, Marcus burst into the room. You need to see this. Chen's marketplace stock is in freefall, down 30% since the market opened. I pulled up the financial news on my tablet. The headlines were brutal. Chen's marketplace future in doubt as Amazon partners with innovative competitor, Traditional grocery chain faces digital disruption. Former executive's new venture threatens family business legacy. My phone buzzed. David's number. I let it go to voicemail. CNBC wants an interview, Lisa said. They're calling us the future of hybrid retail. Before I could respond, the security desk called. Ms. Chen, your father is here. I froze. Dad hadn't tried to contact me since the day they fired me. Send him up. He looked older somehow, standing in the doorway of our ultra-modern office. His eyes took in the screens showing real-time data analytics, the developers coding new features, the electric delivery vans being loaded in our automated warehouse. This is what you were trying to tell us, he said quietly. All those proposals, all those ideas we rejected. This is just the beginning, I replied. Would you like to see how it really works? For the next hour, I showed him everything. The AI system that learned customer preferences and automatically suggested recipes based on dietary restrictions and past purchases. The computer vision technology that sorted produce better than human hands. The automated warehouse where robots picked and packed orders with 99.9% accuracy. That's why Amazon chose us, I explained as we watched the system work. We're not just another delivery service. We've reinvented the entire grocery experience. And our customers? Dad asked. The ones who like traditional shopping? I pulled up our customer interface. They can still have it. Our stores combine digital convenience with personal service. Watch. I showed him how customers could chat with real product experts through the app. How our smart shopping carts guided people through physical stores while suggesting complementary items. How our system remembered every preference and interaction. This isn't destroying tradition, I said softly. It's evolving it, making it better. Dad was quiet for a long moment. Your brother is calling an emergency board meeting. Chen's stock has lost almost half its value since your announcement. I know. He wants to sue you, claims you stole company secrets. I laughed. Everything we built here is original. Every innovation they rejected, we developed from scratch. Check the patents. Before he could respond, Marcus rushed in. Sarah, you need to see this. Chen's just announced they're launching their own delivery service. They're trying to partner with Instacart. I pulled up their press release and shook my head. Too little, too late. They still don't understand. This isn't about delivery. It's about reimagining the entire retail experience. As if to prove my point, our screens lit up with new data. The lunchtime rush was starting, and our AI was already adjusting delivery routes, predicting demand spikes, ensuring every order would arrive exactly when promised. 3 minutes average delivery delay, Lisa announced proudly, across 5,000 active orders. Dad watched the system work, and I saw something change in his expression. The same look he had 30 years ago when he first realized he could revolutionize Asian grocery imports. The board meeting, he said slowly. Would you come? I hesitated. To what end? To show them this. All of it, before we make another mistake. 2 hours later, I stood in Chen's Marketplace's familiar boardroom. The same room where they'd fired me, now filled with panicked board members watching their investment collapse. David was mid-rant when I walked in. Have to stop them. They're destroying everything we've built. No, I said clearly. We're building something better, and you can either adapt or become obsolete. What followed was the most intense presentation of my life. I showed them everything, the technology, the customer data, the growth projections. With each slide, the reality of their situation became clearer. We're not just losing market share, I concluded. We're losing the future. Every day you cling to outdated methods, you fall further behind. So what's your point? David snapped. You've won. Come to gloat. I've come to offer a partnership. The room went silent. Phoenix Market has the technology and innovation. Chen's Marketplace has the brand recognition and supplier relationships. Together, we could dominate the market. A merger? One board member asked. A transformation, I corrected. Chen's stores become hybrid locations, traditional shopping enhanced by our technology. Our delivery network handles online orders. Both brands grow stronger together. And who would run this transformed company? David asked tightly. We both would. You understand traditional retail operations. I understand digital innovation. We need both. The board deliberations lasted 6 hours. In the end, survival instinct won out over pride. Chen's marketplace would merge with Phoenix Market, creating a new kind of retail company that bridged tradition and innovation. The next few months were intense, converting Chen's stores with our technology, training staff on the new systems, helping customers adapt to the changes. But the results were undeniable. Sales grew 200% in the first quarter. Customer satisfaction hit record highs. The stock price recovered and then soared as investors recognized the potential of our hybrid model. David struggled at first, but eventually found his groove running our premium in-store experiences. Turned out he was right about some customers wanting personal service. He just hadn't understood how technology could enhance rather than replace it. Dad spent more time in the business than he had in years, fascinated by how we'd reinvented his original vision. "You saw the future," he told me one day. "Just like I saw the potential in imported groceries 30 years ago. I forgot that innovation doesn't stop." 1 year after the merger, I stood in our flagship store, now a showcase of how traditional retail and cutting-edge technology could work together. The historic Chen's Marketplace sign hung above our smart shopping carts. Customers chatted with knowledgeable staff while our AI offered personalized recommendations through their phones. "Excuse me," an elderly customer approached. "Are you Sarah Chen, the one who made all these changes?" I nodded, slightly nervous. Many of our longtime customers had initially resisted the digital transformation. "I just wanted to say thank you," she smiled. "I still come in to shop because I love the atmosphere, but I use your app for deliveries when my arthritis acts up. It's the best of both worlds." That's when I knew we'd succeeded, not just in saving the family business, but in making it better. We hadn't destroyed tradition, we'd helped it evolve. Last week, a young entrepreneur asked my advice after a retail conference. "My family's business is struggling with digital transformation," she said. "They're afraid of losing their identity." I showed her our flagship store's command center, where traditional retail expertise merged seamlessly with cutting-edge technology. "Innovation doesn't mean abandoning your roots," I told her. "It means helping them grow in new directions. Sometimes the best way to honor tradition is to help it evolve." David joined us in the command center, now comfortable among the screens and data flows. "Tell her about the time you got fired," he grinned, "and how it was the best thing that ever happened to the family business." We'd come a long way from that day in the boardroom. The company continued to grow and innovate, but now we did it together. Tradition and technology, past and future, family and progress all working in harmony. As I write this from my office overlooking our hybrid retail operation, I think about how far we've come. The tech fantasies that got me fired have transformed not just our family business, but the entire retail industry. Dad still comes to work every day, proud to see his immigrant's dream evolve into something he never imagined. David has become a champion of innovation, always pushing us to find new ways to enhance the customer experience. And me? I learned that true innovation isn't about destroying the old to make way for the new. It's about finding ways to make them work together, creating something better than either could be alone. After all, family businesses, like families themselves, don't have to choose between tradition and progress. They just need the courage to let both grow together. The crystal chandelier glittered above the white tablecloth as waiters in crisp black uniforms circled with silver trays of appetizers. Richardson's was Boston's most exclusive restaurant, the kind of place where reservations were hereditary and the menu didn't list prices. I adjusted my tie nervously, feeling like an imposter despite my carefully tailored suit. Across from me, Sophie smiled encouragingly, reaching under the table to squeeze my hand. We'd been dating for 2 years, but this was my first formal introduction to her extended family. Her father, Gregory Davidson, sat at the head of the table, occasionally checking his Patek Philippe watch as if our dinner was cutting into more important engagements. "So, Michael," he began after the sommelier had poured an expensive Bordeaux for everyone except my parents, who had requested water. "Sophia tells me you're a teacher?" He pronounced the word as if describing an exotic disease. "Yes, sir. High school physics at Westridge Academy." "Admirable." He nodded, not looking admirable at all. "Starting salary for teachers these days is what, 40,000? 47 actually," I corrected politely, "plus summers for research." Gregory exchanged glances with his brother Charles, a hedge fund manager whose Ferrari was probably being valeted outside. Research. I see. My parents sat quietly across the table. Dad in his dependable navy suit that he wore to church and special occasions. Mom in a simple dress she'd bought on sale at Macy's. They looked uncomfortable but dignified, determined to make a good impression despite the obvious wealth disparity. And your family business is? Gregory turned to my father, eyebrows raised. Robert owns a hardware store, my mother answered proudly. Callahan's Hardware in Worcester. It's been in the family for 3 generations. Charles nearly choked on his wine. A hardware store. Quaint. Very entrepreneurial, added Gregory's wife Victoria, her diamond earrings catching the light as she tilted her head condescendingly. I felt heat rising in my face, but Sophia jumped in. Michael's father gives incredible advice. He helped us fix up our apartment last summer. I'm sure he did. Gregory nodded, signaling for more wine. Though I imagine you'll be moving somewhere more suitable once you're married. Perhaps that high-rise development near the financial district? I know the developer. We're happy where we are, Sophia replied firmly. We'd had this conversation before. Her parents couldn't understand why their Stanford-educated daughter chose to live in a modest apartment on a teacher's salary when she could easily join her father's investment firm. So, Mr. Callahan, Charles leaned forward, swirling his wine. Do you find that people still shop at local hardware stores? With the big box retailers everywhere these days. My father smiled mildly. We do all right. Our customers appreciate personal service and expertise. I'll bet they do, Gregory chuckled. Though I can't imagine the margins are anything to write home about. Victoria touched her pearl necklace delicately. Do you handle the accounting yourself, or? My wife manages the books, Dad replied, nodding toward Mom. Sarah has always had a head for numbers. How resourceful, Victoria smiled thinly, keeping it all in the family. As the appetizers arrived, Sophia's cousin Bradley, fresh from his MBA at Wharton, decided to join in. A teacher's salary in Boston. How do you even survive? The table erupted in laughter, and I felt Sophia's hand tighten around mine under the tablecloth. My parents exchanged a glance but said nothing. We managed just fine, I said evenly. Oh, I'm sure you manage, Gregory chuckled, making air quotes. But marriage is expensive, and children even more so. Sophia was raised with certain standards. Dad, Sophia warned, but Gregory waved her off. It's a legitimate concern, princess. Michael seems like a wonderful young man, but practical matters matter. The Davidsons have certain financial expectations. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I would have ignored it, but the screen showed my father's office number, strange for a Friday evening. I'm sorry, I should take this. It might be important. I excused myself and stepped away from the table. Michael? It's Dad. Everything okay? Yes, but I need to speak with you and Mr. Davidson. Something's come up with his loan application. I frowned, confused. His what? His loan application. To the foundation. Could you put me on speaker when you get back to the table? Sure, Dad. When I returned, the conversation had moved on to Bradley's new position at Goldman Sachs. I cleared my throat. I'm sorry to interrupt, but my father needs to speak with Mr. Davidson about a loan application. Gregory's fork clattered against his plate. What loan application? He asked me to put him on speaker, I said, still confused. I set my phone in the center of the table and pressed the speaker button. Mr. Davidson, Robert Callahan here. I apologize for interrupting your dinner. Gregory straightened his tie, composing himself. Callahan, what's this about a loan application? There must be some mistake. No mistake, sir. I'm calling about Davidson Development's application to the Callahan Foundation for the Downtown Revitalization Project. $50 million, if I recall correctly. The table went silent. Charles froze with his wine glass halfway to his lips. What? Gregory stammered, color draining from his face. The board just approved it unanimously. I wanted to let you know right away since you marked it urgent. Shall I have the funds transferred Monday morning, or would you prefer immediate processing? There'd be a small expediting fee, of course. Gregory stared at the phone, then at my father across the table, his expression a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. You're Robert Callahan, of the Callahan Foundation. My father nodded simply. Yes, though I prefer Bob in social settings. Victoria's hand flew to her pearls. The Callahan Foundation that funded the new wing at Mass General? That owns half the waterfront. 30% of the waterfront, my mother corrected gently. We've diversified in recent years. I sat frozen, as confused as everyone else at the table. The Callahan Foundation. My parents had never mentioned any foundation. Mr. Davidson. My father's voice continued from the speaker. About that transfer. Gregory swallowed hard. Monday is fine, Mr. Callahan. Thank you. Excellent. We can discuss details at the board reception next week. Sarah and I look forward to seeing you there. Enjoy your dinner. The call ended, leaving an awkward silence broken only by the ambient restaurant noise around us. Charles was the first to recover, forcing a laugh that sounded more like a cough. Well, Robert, you've been holding out on us. My father took a sip of water. Not at all. You simply never asked about the foundation. We like to keep the hardware store as our public face. Keeps us grounded. The hardware store is a cover? Bradley asked incredulously. Not a cover, my mother clarified. It's where Robert's grandfather started. We maintain it out of respect for our roots and because we believe in honest work. The foundation grew from those principles. I stared at my parents, strangers suddenly in familiar faces. Why did you ever tell me? Mom reached across to touch my hand. We wanted you to find your own way without the burden of the family name. You chose teaching because you love it, not because you were rebelling against or conforming to family expectations. Gregory had gone from pale to flushed. The Callahan Foundation assets are, what exactly? Last quarter. Just under $12 billion, my mother replied matter-of-factly. We've had a good year. Victoria nearly dropped her fork. Billion? With a B? Philanthropy has been very good to us, Dad said mildly. Though we find that how you give matters more than how much. Gregory turned to me, his expression completely transformed. Michael, I had no idea. Please accept my apologies for any misunderstanding earlier. No apology necessary, I replied automatically, still processing this revelation. Sophia was staring at me, her expression unreadable. I couldn't tell if she was shocked, amused, or angry that I'd never shared this information I myself hadn't known. If you'll excuse us, she said suddenly, standing and taking my hand. Michael and I need a moment. She led me to a quiet alcove near the restaurant's entrance, away from prying eyes and ears. Did you know? She demanded immediately. Sophia, I swear I had no idea. The hardware store, our house in Worcester, everything has always been solidly middle class. Comfortable but modest. She searched my face, then burst out laughing. Oh my God, your father is incredible. Did you see Dad's face? I thought he was going to swallow his tongue. Her reaction broke the tension, and I found myself laughing too. I'm still in shock. $12 billion? My allowance growing up was $20 a week, and I had to mow the lawn for that. She grew serious, taking both my hands in hers. Why do you think they kept it from you? I thought about it, remembering countless childhood lessons about the value of hard work, the importance of earning respect rather than buying it, the responsibility that came with privilege. I think they wanted me to understand the value of things that money can't buy, to know who I was apart from wealth or status. And who are you, Michael Callahan? Sophia asked softly. The same person I was 20 minutes ago. A physics teacher who loves explaining how the universe works. The guy who fell in love with a brilliant woman who chose a meaningful career over a corner office in her father's company. I hesitated. Does this change anything for you? She shook her head firmly. Not a thing. Though I admit I'm enjoying watching my family squirm after the way they treated your parents. When we returned to the table, the dynamic had shifted dramatically. Gregory was engaged in animated conversation with my father about community development initiatives. Victoria was showing my mother pictures of her charity committee's recent gala, while Charles and Bradley listened attentively to every word my parents spoke. As we took our seats, Gregory raised his glass. A toast to Michael and Sophia, and to new family connections that promised to be enlightening. The evening continued with newfound warmth, though I noticed my parents remained exactly as they had been, polite, unpretentious, and quietly dignified. They answered questions about the foundation's work without boasting, deflected inquiries about their personal wealth, and consistently steered conversations toward community impact rather than financial returns. After dessert, as we waited for the valet to bring around our cars, my father pulled me aside. "Son, I owe you an explanation." "You think?" I replied, but without anger. He smiled apologetically. "Your grandfather built something remarkable from that little hardware store. Not just a business, but a philosophy about wealth and responsibility. When he established the foundation, he was clear about its purpose: to do good quietly, without seeking recognition or power. So you let me believe we were just ordinary? There's no such thing as just ordinary, Michael. Every person has value independent of their bank account. We wanted you to know your own worth before you knew your inheritance. And when were you planning to tell me?" "After the wedding, actually. We have a whole presentation prepared," he chuckled. "Though I admit, I accelerated the timeline a bit tonight. I couldn't sit there and watch that man dismiss you and your mother." I shook my head, amazed. All these years, I've been applying for scholarships, working summer jobs, budgeting carefully. And those experiences shaped you into someone who understands the value of education, hard work, and financial responsibility. Would you trade that understanding for a childhood of privilege?" Before I could answer, the Davidson family approached, led by Gregory with an entirely new demeanor. "Robert, Sarah, we'd love to have you over to the house soon. Perhaps next weekend. A small gathering, just family." "That sounds lovely," my mother replied graciously. "Though we'd be equally happy to host you at our home in Worcester. It's modest, but the garden is beautiful this time of year." Victoria, who had probably never set foot in a suburb like Worcester in her life, nodded enthusiastically. "We'd be delighted. Wouldn't we, Gregory?" As we said our goodbyes, Sophia squeezed my hand and whispered, "Your parents are amazing." "They really are," I agreed, watching as they climbed into their 10-year-old Volvo, a car they clearly could have replaced with a fleet of luxury vehicles at any time. On the drive home, I called my parents on speakerphone so Sophia could hear. "So, $12 billion? I asked without preamble. My mother laughed. 11.8 technically, and most of it is in the foundation, committed to various causes. But still, I was still struggling to reconcile this new reality with my understanding of my family. "Michael," my father said gently, "nothing important has changed. We're still the same people with the same values. The only difference is that now you understand the responsibility that will eventually be yours. The hardware store is a profitable small business that employs 15 people and serves a community that would otherwise have to drive 20 minutes to a big box store. It matters, son." Sophia leaned toward the phone. "Mr. and Mrs. Callahan, I just want to say, thank you for raising someone who chose to teach because he loves it, not because he had to." "We're the ones who should be thanking you, Sophia," my mother replied warmly, "for loving our son when all you knew was that he was a teacher from a family that owned a hardware store." After we hung up, Sophia and I drove in contemplative silence for a while. "Does it bother you?" I finally asked. "That I never knew. That I can't even claim I was rejecting wealth on principle. I just had no idea it existed." She considered this. "What bothers me is thinking about how differently my family would have treated you if they'd known from the beginning. How differently they might have treated someone else in your position who didn't happen to have a secret fortune." "Me too," I admitted. "So what now? Do you quit teaching and join the family foundation?" I shook my head firmly. "Absolutely not. I love my job. Though I might talk to my parents about establishing a scholarship fund for students interested in STEM education." She smiled. "That sounds perfect." Later that night, after dropping Sophia at her apartment, I drove to my own modest one-bedroom, seeing it through new eyes. I could move tomorrow to a penthouse, buy a sports car, live a completely different life. The possibility was dizzying. Instead, I made myself a cup of tea and called my parents again. "I need to understand everything," I told them. "The foundation, the responsibilities, the expectations. If I'm going to be part of this legacy, I want to do it right." My father's voice was warm with pride. "That's exactly what we hoped you'd say. Come home this weekend, we'll start at the beginning. And Sophia, bring her," my mother said without hesitation. "She's family now." As I hung up, I realized that while my understanding of my family had been appended, the core truths remained unchanged. My parents had always valued character over wealth, service over status, and genuine connections over social climbing. The revelation of our financial situation didn't change who we were. It just added responsibility to the values they'd already instilled. 3 months later, Sophia and I were married in a ceremony that balanced elegance with meaning. The Davidson family, still slightly shell-shocked by the revelation of the Callahan fortune, had become noticeably more humble. Gregory had even started showing genuine interest in community development beyond its profit potential. At the reception, my father clinked his glass for the traditional toast. Guests fell silent, many of them still adjusting to the idea that unassuming Robert Callahan from a hardware store was actually Robert Callahan of the Callahan Foundation. When Sarah and I decided to keep our foundation work separate from our family life, he began, we did so believing that wealth should be a tool for good, not a measure of worth. We wanted Michael to define himself by his character, not his inheritance. He turned to me and Sophia. Today, as we celebrate your marriage, we couldn't be prouder of the choice you made, to find someone who values you for exactly who you are, not what you have. He raised his glass. May you build a life together that remains true to itself, regardless of circumstance. And may you always remember that the greatest fortune isn't measured in dollars, but in how many lives you touch for the better. As glasses raised around the room, I caught Gregory Davidson's eye. The arrogance that had so defined him at our first dinner had given way to something resembling respect, not for the Callahan wealth, but perhaps finally for the Callahan values. And that, I realized, was the point of my parents' long deception, to ensure that when the truth eventually emerged, we would all understand that true worth had nothing to do with net worth at all. The steam from the kitchen couldn't mask the emptiness of my dining room. 6 months after inheriting my mother's restaurant, Golden Lotus, I was failing. Only 3 tables were occupied during what should have been the dinner rush, and I knew exactly who to blame, myself. Table 4 says their dumplings are too dry, Jenny, my last remaining waitress, whispered as she hurried past. And Table 7 is complaining about the sauce being too bland. I nodded, trying to keep my composure. Mom's dumplings had never been too dry. Her sauces were legendary in San Francisco's Chinatown. But I wasn't on. Another stellar evening, I see. The voice made my shoulders tense. I turned to find my sister-in-law, Amanda, standing in the entrance, designer purse dangling from her manicured fingers. Behind her, my older brother David wore the same disapproving expression he'd had since Mom's funeral. We're just opening for dinner service, I said, straightening my apron. What brings you here? Oh, Lucy. Amanda's sympathy was as fake as her eyelashes. We thought we should check on you. After all, family needs to look out for each other. The way she said family made my skin crawl. Ever since she'd married David 5 years ago, Amanda had appointed herself the keeper of the Chen family's image. My modest restaurant didn't fit her vision of success. I'm fine, I replied. Just busy. David snorted, looking around the nearly empty dining room. Yes, I can see how overwhelmed you are with customers. They followed me as I moved through the restaurant, Amanda's heels clicking on the worn wooden floors Mom had loved so much. Every step felt like an invasion. The paint is peeling, Amanda noted, running a finger along the wall. And these decorations, they're so dated. When was the last time you updated anything? Mom liked it this way. Mom's gone, Lucy. David's voice was sharp, and she clearly made a mistake leaving you the restaurant. The words hit harder than he probably intended, or maybe he meant them to hurt. David had never understood why Mom left Golden Lotus to me instead of him. He was the successful one, Stanford Business School, executive position, house in Pacific Heights. I was just the daughter who dropped out of college to help Mom run her little restaurant. Actually, Amanda said, her tone dripping with false concern, that's why we're here. We want to help. She pulled a document from her designer bag, laying it on one of the empty tables. We've had several interested buyers look at the property. The location alone is worth a fortune. This offer here, she pointed to a number that made my eyes widen, would set you up nicely. You could go back to school, start fresh. I stared at the paper, feeling slightly sick. You've been showing my restaurant to buyers? Be reasonable, Lucy. David stepped closer. You're drowning here. The food isn't the same. The customers are leaving, and let's be honest, you never had Mom's talent. She would hate seeing her life's work decline like this. Get out. My voice was quiet but firm. Lucy. Get out? Amanda gathered her papers with an exaggerated sigh. We're trying to help you. Think about it. The offer expires next week. After they left, I retreated to the kitchen, my sanctuary. The familiar scents of ginger and garlic should have been comforting. But tonight they just reminded me of everything I was losing. Mom had opened Golden Lotus 30 years ago, armed with nothing but her recipes and determination. She'd built it into one of Chinatown's most beloved restaurants. Celebrities had dined here. Food critics raved about her secret sauces. Even through the worst of times, Dad leaving, the recession, the pandemic, she kept the doors open. Now, 6 months after her death, I was watching it all slip away. Lucy? Jenny poked her head in. Table 4 wants to speak to the owner. Probably another complaint. I wiped my hands, straightened my shoulders, and headed out. The elderly couple at table 4 looked vaguely familiar. Regular customers, maybe from Mom's time. Are you Margaret Chen's daughter? The woman asked as I approached. I nodded, bracing for criticism. We've been coming here for 20 years, she said. Your mother's dumplings got us through some hard times. She hesitated. Dear, the food tonight. It's not the same. I know, my voice cracked slightly. I'm trying, but... Have you checked her recipe box? The man interrupted. The special one in the kitchen safe. I blinked. What safe? They exchanged glances. Margaret never told you about the safe behind the lucky cat. My heart started racing. The lucky cat, a gaudy golden statue that had sat on Mom's kitchen shelf for as long as I could remember. She'd always said it was watching over her secrets. I thought she was joking. Back in the kitchen, I approached a shelf where the cat had sat for decades. Sure enough, behind where it rested was a slight discoloration in the paint. Heart pounding, I carefully moved the heavy statue. There it was, a small wall safe, painted to match the kitchen walls perfectly. But what was the combination? I tried Mom's birthday. Wrong. The restaurant's opening date. Wrong again. My birthday, David's birthday, even Dad's birthday. Nothing worked. Frustrated, I slumped against the wall. The kitchen felt different now, charged with possibility and mystery. What had Mom hidden away? Why hadn't she told me about it? Then I remembered something. A conversation from years ago, when I was helping prep for the dinner service. Every great chef has a secret, Mom had said, chopping ginger with practiced precision. Something that makes their food special. Know what mine is? Your recipes? I guessed. She'd smile mysteriously. No, little Lotus. The secret is love. And do you know when I first fell in love with cooking? When? December 12, 1982. The day my mother taught me to make dumplings. With trembling fingers, I turned to the safe. 12 to 1282. The lock clicked open. Inside was a small red box, the kind used for jewelry, and an envelope with my name on it. The envelope contained a letter in Mom's elegant handwriting. My dearest Lucy, if you're reading this, then you've discovered my final secret. I always knew you would when the time was right. The restaurant is struggling, isn't it? You're trying to recreate my recipes, but something's missing. The customers can taste it. Your brother is probably pushing you to sell. Don't. What's in this box is more valuable than any real estate offer. It's my legacy, not just recipes, but the heart of Golden Lotus. The secret that made people line up around the block, that won awards, that built our family's dream. But before you open it, remember this. A recipe is just instructions on paper. The magic comes from the cook's heart. You have always had my heart, Lucy. That's why I left you the restaurant. Not because you were the better chef, but because you understand that food is about more than technique. It's about love, memory, and the courage to keep trying until you get it right. Now open the box, my little Lotus, and show them what you can do. All my love, Mom. With shaking hands, I opened the red box. Inside was a small key and another note. For the box in my old office closet. Everything you need is there. Make me proud. I clutched the key to my chest, tears streaming down my face. In the dining room, I could hear more customers leaving. Tomorrow, David and Amanda would probably return with more offers, more pressure to sell. But they didn't know what I had just found. Mom's final gift wasn't just recipes. It was a chance to prove myself, to save her legacy, to show everyone that she'd been right to trust me with Golden Lotus. I looked at my reflection in the stainless steel of the kitchen counter. For the first time in months, I saw not just grief and uncertainty, but determination. Jenny, I called out. After closing, I need your help with something. Tomorrow would change everything. The question was, Was I ready for what Mom had left me to discover? Part 2. The Heart of Golden Lotus. Mom's office hadn't been touched since the day she died. Walking in after closing time, with only Jenny beside me, felt like stepping into a time capsule. The air still held traces of Mom's jasmine perfume, mixed with the scents of spices that had permeated the walls over decades. "Are you sure you want me here?" Jenny asked softly. "This seems private." I squeezed her hand. "You've stuck with me through everything. Your family now." The closet was small, tucked behind Mom's desk. Inside, beneath a stack of old menus and aprons, sat a wooden box with a small keyhole. The key from the safe fit perfectly. "Oh my God," Jenny breathed as I opened the lid. Inside was a collection of worn notebooks, their pages yellow with age and spotted with soft stains. Each one was filled with Mom's handwriting, not just recipes, but stories, secrets, techniques passed down through generations. But there was something else. Photographs, newspaper clippings, and letters documenting Golden Lotus's history. And at the bottom, a leather-bound journal with the true secret written on its cover. With trembling hands, I opened it. "My dearest Lucy, if you're reading this, you found not just recipes, but the heart of Golden Lotus. Every great restaurant has a soul, something that makes it more than just food and walls. Our soul is in these pages, in the stories of every person who helped make this place special. Remember Mrs. John, who taught me the secret to perfect dumpling folds? Her grandson now runs the vegetable stand down the street. He still saves the best bok choy for us. Remember old Mr. Wu, who loaned me money to fix the roof when the bank refused? His special spice blend is on page 47. I promise to keep it in the family. Every recipe here comes with a story, a connection, a piece of love woven into the ingredients. That's what your brother never understood. He sees numbers and property values. You see people and memories. Now it's your turn to add to these pages, to make these recipes your own, to build on our legacy. With all my love, Mom." P.S. Check page 93. That's where the real magic begins. I turned to page 93 and gasped. There, in detailed notes, was the secret to Mom's famous XO sauce, the condiment that had put Golden Lotus on the culinary map. But it wasn't just a recipe. It was a story of how she developed it, testing ingredients for months, combining traditional techniques with bold innovations. "Jenny," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "we're going to need ingredients. Lots of them." We worked through the night, Jenny helping me prep while I studied Mom's notes. Each recipe was a revelation, not just ingredients and methods, but the why behind every choice. The exact heat needed to bring out the scallop sweetness in the XO sauce. The precise folding technique that kept dumplings from drying out. By dawn, the kitchen smelled like my childhood memories. The first batch of dumplings looked exactly like Mom's. The sauce was perfect. "Try this," I said, offering Jenny a spoon. Her eyes widened. "Lucy, it's just like your mom used to make." I smiled through tears. "No, it's better." The next few days were a blur of cooking, testing, and rediscovering. I closed the restaurant for renovations, but really I was relearning everything. Each recipe in Mom's notebooks taught me something new, not just about cooking, but about Golden Lotus itself. The regular customers had their own pages. Mr. Chen from the bank loved his dumplings with extra chili oil. The Liu family always ordered their noodles slightly softer for their grandmother. Every dish had a story, a connection to our community. Then came the day we reopened. I'd sent invitations to all our old regulars, including the elderly couple who told me about the safe. David and Amanda received one too, not out of spite, but because Mom would have wanted it. The dining room was full for the first time in months. I kept the worn wooden floors, the faded decorations, but added small touches. Fresh flowers, new tablecloths, subtle changes that respected tradition while embracing the future. The first dishes went out, then the second. The dining room grew quiet except for the sounds of eating and soft exclamations of pleasure. Just like Margaret used to make. No, even better. The sauce, it's perfect. David and Amanda arrived late, dressed like they were attending a funeral rather than a dinner. They sat at Mom's old favorite table, ordering with barely concealed disdain. I served them myself, Mom's special dumplings, noodles in XO sauce, and her secret braised pork. "What is this?" Amanda demanded after one bite, her carefully maintained composure cracking. "This isn't. How did you?" David was silent, staring at his plate. I saw him blink rapidly and realized he was fighting tears. "It tastes like Mom's," he whispered. "No," I said gently. "It tastes like love." That was always her secret ingredient. I placed Mom's journal on their table, open to a specific page. There, among the recipes and notes, was a letter addressed to David. "My precious son, if you're reading this, then Lucy has found my notebooks and understood their true meaning. You may think I chose her over you, but that's not true. I chose the right person to carry on, not just the restaurant, but its heart. You have your own gifts, my boy. Your drive, your intelligence, they've taken you far. But Lucy has something special. She understands that Golden Lotus isn't just a business. It's a family, a community, a legacy of love. Support her, David. She'll need your business sense sometimes, just as you might need her reminder that success isn't always measured in dollars. You are both my children, and I love you both. Different gifts, different paths, but the same heart. Love, Mom." I left them reading, returning to the kitchen where tickets were piling up. Through the service window, I watched David wipe his eyes, then slowly taste each dish again, this time with real attention. After closing, he found me in the kitchen. "Lucy, He stopped, looking around at the space where we'd grown up watching Mom cook. "I'm sorry. I thought I knew better." "I know." I touched his arm gently. "Want to learn how to make the dumplings?" Mom left instructions for both of us. He managed a small smile. "Maybe next time, but I do have some ideas about expanding the business. If you're interested." "Expanding?" "Golden Lotus sauces. Packaged for retail. Your recipes, my business connections. Mom would have loved it." I thought about the notebooks, full of family secrets and community connections. Let me think about it. Whatever we do, we have to do it right. For Mom. In the months that followed, Golden Lotus flourished. Not just survived, but truly thrived. The dining room was full every night, now with a mix of old regulars and new faces. We started a cooking class on Sundays, sharing some of Mom's simpler recipes with the community. David and I eventually did launch the sauce business, but we did it carefully, maintaining the quality Mom would have demanded. Amanda learned to make dumplings, though she complained about the flour under her manicured nails. The lucky cat still sits on its shelf in the kitchen, guarding its secrets. The safe behind it is empty now, its treasure distributed through the notebooks I use every day, adding my own notes alongside Mom's. Last week, a food critic from the Chronicle came in. His review made me cry. Golden Lotus has managed the impossible, honoring a beloved legacy while creating something new and vibrant. The classic dishes taste exactly as I remember from Margaret Chen's day, yet somehow even better. Her daughter Lucy has discovered what every great chef knows, that the secret ingredient in memorable food isn't in any recipe, it's in the heart of the person cooking it. Mom would have loved that review. Not for the praise, but for the understanding. Every night before service, I touch the lucky cat for good fortune, just like Mom used to do. Sometimes, in the quiet moments before the dinner rush, I swear I can feel her presence in the steam rising from the woks, in the rhythm of chopping vegetables, in the laughter of guests enjoying their meals. The recipes she left weren't just about food. They were about legacy, family, and the courage to believe in yourself. Every dish we serve carries a piece of that legacy, a blend of tradition and innovation, of memory and possibility. David stops by most Sundays now, sometimes rolling up his sleeves to help in the kitchen. He's not very good at dumpling folding yet, but he's learning. More importantly, he's understanding what Mom knew all along, that true success isn't measured in profit margins, but in the smiles of satisfied customers and the warmth of family working together. As for me, I've started my own notebook, adding new recipes alongside Mom's classics. Someday, I'll pass these books on to the next generation, along with the most important lesson Mom taught us, that the greatest achievements come not from proving others wrong, but from proving yourself right. The lucky cat watches over it all, guarding not just recipes now, but the true heart of Golden Lotus, a legacy of love, served one dish at a time.